a contractor. We follow in all properties, so you know, in case somebody asks, we follow fire regulations. Fire marshal comes and checks and tells us what we can do and what we can't do. So when people, you know, bring that subject up, you can say we follow all the rules religiously. We have to. And anyway, again, this massive effort of sawing these trees into pieces for the scouts to line them up, make this little path. And then these are all planted lemonade berry bushes, which of course are California natives and will get quite large. It's related to the cashew, this particular one. The reason it's called lemonade berry bush is because presumably the Indians who utilized, can you hear me back there? Okay, the Indian utilized all plants, as native people will do. And one of the things they did, and we may later on see some berries, from the berries, they're very tart, and you can make a brew. You can make either a hot tea or a cold drink in the summer, or if you're hiking, or the Indians were hiking, or whatever, you could just suck it. It's like a lemon drop. And it gives you a little bit extra saliva if you ran out of water or something like that. So it's a very, very neat bush. It stays green all year. So if you have an odd hill that you don't know what to plant on, this is really nice. It gets large, you know, remember that, as does the toyonberry, which is another large native bush. But it looks nice and it stays clean and is relatively fire resistant. People ask us about fire in general, and you know, the answer is generally that native plants are somewhat resistant, but if the fire is big enough, everything will burn. You can't plant something that will never burn. It's not possible. You do the best you can. You try not to have dense habitat that is easy and flammable in your houses if you can, but generally, you know, you try to consider that. And of course, you always have the barrier, the 200 feet, the clearance that you need in your houses. Again, observe how large the willow has gotten in a year and a half. Those are really, and you know, it's amazing. You just make cuttings, piece of stick, in other words, and just stick them in the ground before the winter rains come. And that's it. And this is how they take off. Again, you see, if we don't do anything or don't have the funds to do it, how the fennel is. And fennel seed, of course, as you can see, is very prolific. One of the reasons that it's very invasive. Fennel is originally from the Mediterranean. It is unknown how it got here, but presumably because people brought it as a spice. Please feel free anytime to collect fennel seeds. It's a lot cheaper than $6 for, you know, at the grocery store. But the seeds will be in the ground for a long time, and when they get this massive, it's very hard to even get to them on a slope like that. Cut them down. The way we do that, reluctantly, but the only way we can do it is you cannot dig them out. They have tap roots. And if any of you have ever tried to pull out a fennel plant that's perhaps a foot tall, no way. It just tears off. The taproot is like a carrot, since it needs to get water, it goes all the way down. So what needs to be done, and very labor intensive once again, is you cut it off at ground level and you spray it with Roundup immediately before it dries and the capillaries close off. And then at least the main plant, the mother plant, will die. Being a grassroots organization, we had to learn all that. In the beginning, the board members did this. We went out there and we, you know, at first we tried to dig them out, which was of course ridiculous. Then we cut it off. Well, very nicely. Then one plant sprouts 15 little plants on the outside. So that doesn't work. So finally we decided, well, we can't do this for hundreds and hundreds of plants and huge acreage to take the fennel out. So that's what we eventually learned, and that's how, you know, it went. And now, of course, we're able, because of the support and the membership that we have and continuous support that we need, we do have some paid workers that actually do the heavy-duty labor and go down there with chainsaws and cut the trees. And we have a small tractor-type wheelbarrow that hauls some of the stuff out so it doesn't have to be carried out. And then the city of RPV, under whose auspices we do a lot of these things, brings dumpsters in so that we can get rid of the green waste. So that's how all that works, and that is the same for all the properties. Let me see whether I can get Karen to change sides here. This bush that we see here is, well, again, the California fuchsia right here, and this and that's blooming is California golden bush. A very nice native plant. When it gets to be funny looking and you don't like the look, you can cut it down somewhat And let me get out of this one. California fuchsia is wonderful, but it does spread. So in case you're contemplating on putting it in your garden, be aware of that. But many of these things now give really nice color, and you kind of learn to pick that out and be grateful. Can I? Okay. So now we have the view, and you can see it's really spectacular. I also wanted to quickly answer the question that one of you had about the plants in the garden going over into the preserve. A good example is this corner house here. This couple has been, very cooperative, is a great supporter of the Conservancy, and is now working with the Conservancy because our lot line goes really close to their house. So it's almost like part of their yard, but we're part of it also. So we need to work together. So they're working very diligently with our with Barbara Dye, our executive director, and also with our stewardship director who oversees these restorations. And it's important to have that cooperation because, as you can see, we need to work together. But this is a good example. They've just started that, and we have established the lot lines, which are sort of sometimes a little vague. People think, oh, I just plant down the hill, that's fine, there's nobody here. But we do have to preserve the lot lines. We try to be good neighbors and try to work with the neighborhood if possible. Further down there is was a garden a long time ago that actually went down the canyon, planted an orchard, fenced it off, put sprinkling system into the property of the preserve. So that had to come down. We compromised in taking just the fence down and taking away the sprinkling system, but leaving the trees, just as a compromise. So we try to do that. Okay, we're going to walk down here, and this gives you a good overview. One of the major accomplishments that we have is we have a third grade education program. It's established many, many years ago because we felt that the kids are the future generation, are the environmentalists of the future, and third graders are still very keen to learn and easy to work with. And so we started that, and all the schools on the hill, including San Pedro, now have a third grade education program. People will go in, teachers will go in, teachers also help and show the kids the plants, the fauna, the animals in a book, and then they all take a walk near their schools. There's no busing. It always has to be near the school so that they can walk, and this is one of the best examples. Vista Grande is down on Golden Meadow, if you know this area. On the bottom of a hill is an elementary school that has been here forever, and there's a property owner and now board member, Jim Stays, who has allowed the students to go through his yard into the canyon. And that was only possible since the trails were established. And now the kids can walk and actually feel and see the plants and get that experience. And that has been a wonderful thing. So that's up there, sort of where the white fence is, I would gather, that they can come down and then enter the preserve and get their real life experience. So that has been wonderful, particularly nice in this particular canyon, because again, with the help of a neighbor. Okay. We just stopped here because you'll see this bush a lot on the peninsula. All right. In fact, and this is called an acacia. Okay, it's a non-native, and what happened is it was extensively used in gardens. When the developer first built, they want something that greens up quickly so the house looks nice when they sell it. And the acacia will grow very quickly. And unfortunately, it actually has some very nice little blossoms in the spring. You will remember they have these little yellow pom-poms. And unfortunately, though, when you look in there, you can see it also has a multitude of seeds. Okay, that's a fire hazard. And also, they don't really last very long. 25 years maybe, then they start looking raggedy, looking with a lot of dead wood, all very much flammable. And that will just go up like a big flare. The seed pods are interesting, and we may find some, we may not. They have a seed in it that is covered in sort of a glutinous red cover, jelly-like, a brilliant red, and then the seed itself is black like an eye. In the middle looks sort of like an eye of a cyclops. And birds eat the covering, then expel the seed all over the place. And so that's why we get an awful lot of acacia. This will most likely will have to go eventually, but there's so much of all of this that you can only do And again, as money comes in, as we get grants, we bit by bit, we do this. In fact, we had one giant pampas grass a little bit further down, and our stewardship director tells me that they try to take that out because there's still, if you have one, that's good because you can get rid of it before it spreads. So I don't know whether they had time to do it. Nope, they didn't. It's still there. But see, that's a good thing because I always think when you take that out, you make giant progress because you took the one out that might be the granddaddy of all the pampas grass in the canyon. So that will go. We just stopped here because I did want to show you some California native again, which is the cliff aster. Now you've seen that. It's on all the hills. It comes very easily. It actually keeps pretty well in a vase. You can use it sort of like baby's breath. And as you can see, it's one of the first things that comes out when it's cool again. It will during the summer. It dies off to virtually nothing, and then it comes back out from underground sprouts. And as you can see, it has come out all over as one of the first things that comes. Eventually, after the rains, there'll be lupins and other things that come out and sprout. But this was such a nice one that I thought I'd tell you. Now, as you can see, we have a bit of a job to do down here yet. Okay. The whole canyon, and that's how the upper part was also dense fennel. And fennel is a what should I say, disturbed ground follower. As soon as you disturb the ground, nice and open, they just spread. And there's a lot of that also in Portuguese Bend, so that's another area that's going to be a big headache. But this eventually will go, and we have made inroads. We have made inroads also with castor bean. Castor bean is a plant that is from warm climates like South America and so forth. It is commercially grown for its oils. It is a highly poisonous plant, but the oil that is extracted from these poisonous beans stays viscous in cold weather. So it is used for car transmissions. In paints, oils, cosmetics, medicinal purposes. Castor bean oil, people may remember, it's pretty caustic stuff. But it's a highly valued, and there are countries, as for instance in France, Brazil, India, that are trying to hybridize it to such a point that they can harvest it better with commercial machines, maybe not letting it get so big, have multiple harvesting seasons in order to do this in a even bigger fashion, because it'll be a renewable resource. Castor beans grow very quickly. In Europe, it is popular as a garden plant because it's a really interesting plant. It has often seeds and blossoms at the same time. The leaves are pretty, but beware, it is highly poisonous. One of the poisons it has I believe it's called resin. Ricin, that's what it's called, ricin, which was used already as a somewhat of a terrorist attack some time ago in England. We remember that, I believe, or Japan, I guess. But it also has very many good properties, and having that oil. But presumably,
what is the poisonous part?
The poison part is actually the entire plant, but the worst part are the seeds. And if we get to one close enough, we have cut so many down, we might not find any, but it looks like a pinto bean. And there's 3 in a capsule, and presumably if a small toddler would eat, for whatever reason, chew on these things, there's a possibility they would die. It is highly poisonous. Some people are so allergic to it that even touching the leaves, I don't think, presumably none of us would, but you better not. Another thing that's very poisonous is oleander. Presumably all of you know that. I read a story a long time ago where somebody made, what should I call them? Spears for barbecuing out of it, and barbecued and promptly poisoned themselves. So not a good thing. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Anko Rao, and I'm a board member of the Conservancy since '91. And I'm also in charge of these walks, so if you have any complaints, I'm the person to talk to. Or suggestions. We're always open, we're trying to learn, we're all learning as we go along. The reason that I stopped here, I just wanted to show you the size of these fennels. As you can see, here are the seed heads, and why it seeds so much, you can see. It's just covered in seeds. And the old stalks just die eventually, and the plant sprouts out new every year. So it's an ongoing problem, and you can see when it's cut down, you know, it looks like this. And when they're really dry, they're relatively easy to take off, but the actual plant is still there, and it will resprout. And again, we have a Brazilian pepper here, which eventually, you know, will have to come out. That we're going to descend now down here, and you can see again there's been massive clearing. They build up this little trail. Again, I can only tell you what it looked like before. A lot of trash was dumped in many years ago. It's then found once we start restoring. So, you know, big strides have been made. I only stopped here because this is a nice patch of what's called giant rye. This is a California native, and you will find it often on north-facing slopes because it needs a little bit more moisture. It looks sort of like cattails, doesn't it? This is something we actually plant when we plant a plant pallet in various, depending on what the spot is. And what happens is it gets moisture from, obviously, from subterranean, little bit water from